Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump visited Mexico City this week. He and Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto held a joint press conference in which Trump's immigration stance seemed muted. He later in the same day addressed supporters in Phoenix and reverted to previous points related to immigration, including building a wall at the border and having Mexico pay for it. Patty, I guess it's not surprising to hear two different stances on the same issue in the same day in 2016, but what was your reaction?
Well, all the anticipation of his softening on immigration that we heard about earlier in the week, and then you kind of had a kumbaya moment in Mexico. Interesting, the trip, a lot of good political theater, and then all of a sudden we're back to the wall. The people you have to feel really bad for are the Latino leaders who are working with Trump, trying to get him to soften things. If they've been interviewed and they said, we really thought we had some deals, he was going to go different ways. We lost a lot of faith in our community because we were working with him, and they're like, we're done with Trump. I will say this, someone should keep Trump away from Twitter for at least 10 minutes because he immediately jumps to the bait. It's like dog with a bone.
David, what do you think would possess President Peña Nieto to have any motivation to agree to a meeting with Donald Trump?
Well, people have talked about that because there was a lot of objections in Mexico. His approval ratings are at 20% in Mexico because A, it came out that he plagiarized his school thesis, and B, his government's been covering up government massacres of innocent people. So he succeeded at least in changing the topic for a while. Loser on this, Ann Coulter. Her big new Trump worship book comes out at exactly the same time when Trump starts vacillating on the issue. And as she says in the book, his supporters will forgive him for anything except changing his mind on immigration. And in this lead up to it, I think we had 11 different immigration positions in 9 days. Winner on this, Sarah Palin, because you can criticize her for her stream of consciousness, James Joyce type speaking, including the poetically brilliant invented language. But once you read it, you read what she says over the years, she has consistent positions on the issues. They may not be deep, but they're consistent. Whereas Trump has no consistency. This exercise where we're trying to say, oh, well, what does he really think? It's like looking at a Jackson Pollock splatter painting and saying, well, what does this tell us about what Jackson Pollock thought about the capital gains tax? It doesn't tell us anything. Language has no meaning to Trump. His word has no meaning to Trump. He violates his business contracts all the time, which are actually fairly certain things, that you do this and I'll pay you that. He doesn't even live up to that. So his supposed positions on immigration and anything else are just a sham. He says what he's feeling or thinking at the moment, and that doesn't mean that he's going to have that same position 10 minutes later. As Gertrude Stein said about Oakland, there's no there there.
Eric, you always get a great segue from Dave, this time a little more poetic than usual. The presidential look of a joint press conference with another head of state, that looked really presidential. Does that look have any legs for those middle squishy voters who have yet to decide?
Maybe. I mean, Trump, one day he does something good. We talk about a reset. He's looking presidential. Then to Patty or whomever, he goes off on Twitter 20 minutes later and completely blows any progress he made. It's a complete roller coaster ride, and not a day by day, but an hour by hour, almost minute by minute roller coaster ride with this guy. I'm not sure I have a ton to add in terms of the immigration and the visit to Mexico. David talked about the losers here. I think the biggest loser, when you talk about this presidential race in a much bigger setting, is just the American people. We are facing a historically awful choice here. It's a choice the country really doesn't want to make. Hillary Clinton, by all rights, should have put this guy away. There should be a 10 to 12 point election, 400 electoral votes, over and done with. And maybe it will end up there. Because in Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton has found the one and only candidate that she can probably beat, and maybe beat convincingly. But yet the polls still show they're closing after everything Donald Trump has done to disqualify himself. Now, the battleground polls, I mean, the Electoral College map still very much favors her. I take some of the up and down of the polling with a grain of salt. But Peggy Noonan, if anyone has access to Peggy Noonan, she has a great column in this morning's Wall Street Journal. She talks about this being a depression versus anxiety election. Anxiety is Donald Trump. Depression is Hillary Clinton. Or it's a fear versus loathing election. Fear is Donald Trump. Loathing is voting for Hillary Clinton. It is just a miserable choice we're facing, and as a country, we need better. We deserve better.
Ben, I guess riffing off of what Eric just said, are you surprised we're not hearing more about third-party candidates when you're seeing, I mean, we have all the stuff about immigration stuff on Donald Trump this week. Then we had more email headlines this morning on Friday regarding Hillary Clinton. I don't have the details making it to a topic, but I guess if there's ever going to be a time for a Gary Johnson, a Jill Stein, this seems to be it. Do you think we'll see greater growth in that area?
You know, I think we will, and I note you're trying to have me put a smiley face on all of this, so I'll see what I can do.
Good luck.
I think we will. You know, I think it's interesting, and maybe it's just in our market, but Gary Johnson has begun to run radio ads now. So I've heard a few of his radio ads, and interestingly enough, one of the people on the radio ads promoting him is a Latino who's talking about, I am a Latino, I have historically been a Republican, but I'm voting for Gary Johnson, and here's why. So he's running radio ads, it's targeted, it's focused, he's clear what constituency he's going after. And Eric's right, this most recent thing with Mexico, the American people are the worse off, and I suppose the second place losers are the Mexican people, because, you know, their president had a chance to stand up, stand firm. I don't blame him, Peña Nieto, for inviting Trump to Mexico. That's the appropriate thing to do. I do blame him for not standing up and just saying in the press conference, yeah, thanks for showing up, but we're not building a wall. We're not paying for anything. You want to do it, build it on your side of the border and knock yourselves out. He didn't do it. And so his people suffer for him not standing up to Trump. The American people suffer because Trump has now alienated our neighbor to the south and the people that live there with this craziness. And, you know, I've almost reached the point where I think I've decided Donald Trump may be criminally narcissistic, because people are looking for him to act presidential if that matters to you. He can't do it because he isn't. You are what you are. This is a guy who's driven solely by what he wants and what he thinks at any given time, which means he has the right to change his mind if he feels like it, because he's him.